Hi, thank you for joining me today. My name is OvidiaStanoi. I am a graduate student working with Kevin Oxner at Columbia University, and today I'm excited to share with you some of our work investigating how emotion regulation relates to social outcomes. The most common models of emotion regulation propose that when we experience an emotional event, let's say you've just learned that you did not get a prestigious fellowship you wanted, we appraise the need to change how we are feeling, and we can do that in one of two possible ways. First, we can use cognitive strategies such as reappraisal. We can change the meaning of the event to make it less negative or more positive. Or distraction. We can change the focus of our attention away from the emotional event. Or we can use strategies that are social in nature. For instance, we could use interpersonal regulation. We can share our feelings with others and recruit their support. Or suppression. We can deliberately put effort into hiding how we are feeling from others. In our daily lives, we don't implement these strategies in isolation, however, but we regulate our emotions as members of social groups that include other people with whom we have different types of relationships. We might be friends with the majority of our peers, for instance, but seek emotional support from a subsample of them. In addition, we usually also have hierarchical relationships with the other people, as individuals take on leadership roles within the group. Finally, we might also have relationships built around social behaviors such as drinking. Considering that most emotions take place in social settings, we think it's important to recognize that the way in which we regulate our emotions must influence our social relationships and the roles we come to occupy in our communities. Thus, in the study we ask, how does the use of different emotion regulation strategies relate to social outcomes? We hypothesize that, first, individuals that use reappraisal often will be more likely to occupy leadership roles in their groups because having the habit of framing events in a positive light will increase both perseverance at a personal level and team morale and motivation at a group level. We also anticipate that participants that tend to regulate their emotions by sharing them with others will be central to their group's emotional support networks because, when we share our emotions with others, we create opportunities for the other people to share their emotions in turn. Finally, we expect participants that suppress their emotions habitually to have fewer friends because they will have a harder time connecting with others and will be perceived as less authentic by their peers. To answer our research question, we use data from a larger longitudinal study investigating processes of social influence in college students. In the first phase of the study, we recruited 24 student groups from Columbia and University of Pennsylvania to complete a social network survey in which all group members were asked to nominate peers on 10 social judgment questions, such as which group members do you like the most? We then used participants' answers to derive for each group 4 social networks that reflect different types of relationships between the group members: friendship, emotional support, leadership, and drinking. In these networks, nodes represent individuals, and edges are directed nominations from one person to another. Once we obtained our networks, we calculated participants' centrality in each one of them by simply counting the number of nominations they received from their peers and normalizing their score on a scale from 0 to 100 to facilitate comparisons across groups. In the second part of the study, we invited a subset of 111 participants to the lab to complete a battery of well-validated scales measuring their tendency to regulate their emotions using different emotion regulation strategies and an fMRI scan. Following the lab session, we also asked participants to report their daily mood, emotion regulation, and drinking behavior for a period of 28 days. To investigate our research question, we estimated our participants' centrality in our 4 networks of interest: friendship, emotional support, leadership, and drinking, as a function of their tendency to use 5 emotion regulation strategies: reappraisal, suppression, interpersonal regulation, distraction, and mindfulness, while holding constant potential confounds such as year in college, depression, and anxiety. First, as expected, we found that suppression is negatively related to centrality in the friendship network, such that participants that use suppression more often were less likely to be nominated as friends by their peers. In the graph on the right, you can see the best fit line from the model superimposed over the raw data. On the x-axis, we have participant suppression scores, mean-centered, and on the y-axis, we have the outcome variable, centrality in the friendship network. The gray lines represent the uncertainty in our beta estimate. At the opposite pole, we see that participants that share their emotions with others habitually are more likely to be sought out for support by their peers. Comparing two individuals that differ by 1 point on the interpersonal regulation scale, we expect the person that uses interpersonal regulation more often to receive 17% more nominations in our emotional support network. This strong result supports our hypothesis that when participants share their emotions with others, they also create opportunities for the other people involved to disclose personal experiences, which makes them hubs in emotional support or intimate networks. We also found an unexpected result. Participants that use interpersonal regulation more often are also more likely to be perceived by their peers to be amongst the high drinkers of the group. Although we did not anticipate this result, it is not completely counterintuitive. Social settings provide opportunities for individuals to share their emotions, but also to engage in more social drinking. While our hypotheses with regard to suppression and interpersonal regulation were confirmed, we did not find a relationship between reappraisal and any of our centrality measures. It is, however, possible that cognitive strategies such as reappraisal and distraction are more important for subjective social outcomes. And that is exactly what we found in a follow-up analysis. In our sample, participants that use reappraisal and attention control often tend to report lower levels of loneliness. Therefore, if we go back to the emotion regulation model we started with, there seems to be a dissociation between how cognitive and social emotion regulation strategies influence social outcomes, with cognitive regulation being predictive of subjective feelings of loneliness, and social regulation strategies being related to objective social measures such as centrality in various networks. We are now investigating what variables moderate these relationships within participants. Preliminary results from the EMA datasets suggest that a positivity bias might mediate a relationship between reappraisal use and loneliness. And with regard to interpersonal regulation and centrality in the emotional support network, as mentioned earlier, we speculate that our results reflect a process of reciprocity. When we share our emotions with others, as opposed to suppressing, we create opportunities for others to share their emotions with us as well, and that is what we see in the EMA datasets so far. With that, I want to thank the Society for Effective Science for organizing this amazing conference. Of course, my advisors Kevin and Niall, everyone in the SCAN lab, our collaborators at UPenn and UNC, and lastly but not least, the Army Research Office for funding this project.